Hello everyone, I hope you're all comfy and ready to listen to chapter 6 of the Christmasaurus. This chapter is called Magnificently Magical Flying Reindeer. For the Christmasaurus, growing up in the North Pole was awesomely fun. He would watch the polar bears play ping pong. He'd watch the forest fairies fish for fidgets, little swimming insects that fairies eat as snacks. They taste like Marmite. He'd watch the snowmen ice skate and the walruses waltz. But, of course, he spent most of his time with Santa and the 8 elves who found him. Snozzletrump, Specklehump, Sparklefoot, Sugar Snout, Starlump, Spudcheeks, Snowcrumb and Sprout. They were like family to the Christmasaurus. As the Christmasaurus grew, they looked after him, fed him his daily serving of 42 mince pies, washed him with the happy tears of fairies, fairy liquid, walked him 3 times an hour, and did pretty much everything that your mum and dad do for you. Those 8 little elves, as well as Santa himself, were the closest thing to parents that the Christmasaurus had, and he loved them all very much indeed. But even though Santa and the elves were a wonderful family, the Christmasaurus was sometimes very, very lonely. He felt lonely because he was different. He was the only dinosaur in the world. There were lots of elves, lots of polar bears, lots of walruses, and whales and snowmen and forest fairies. But there was only one of him, and that made him rather sad. Whenever the Christmasaurus felt sad, he knew there was only one thing that would cheer him up. He would go and visit his favourite of all the creatures in the North Pole, Santa's magnificently magical flying reindeer. Santa's magnificently magical flying reindeer were the most wondrous creatures you could possibly imagine. Clear your head for a moment and I'll help you picture one. So imagine a pair of soft, velvety antlers. Now double their softness. Imagine a pair of deep, twinkling eyes like a starry sky. Imagine a dark brown fur coat speckled with jingly, jangly bells. Imagine 4 bright golden hooves that seem to glow from within. Now imagine this creature flying around 10 metres above your head. And voila! There you have one of Santa's magnificently magical flying reindeer. The Christmasaurus thought they were magnificent too. He would spend hour after hour just watching them fly about in circles, high over his head. You see, the Christmasaurus had a secret. He wished that he could fly up there with them. The Christmasaurus thought that if only he could fly like a reindeer, then maybe he wouldn't be so different. Perhaps one day he might even be allowed to pull Santa's sleigh. Well, once that idea had found its way into the Christmasaurus's head, there wasn't a fidget's chance that the North Pole of getting it out. Pulling Santa's sleigh on Christmas Eve with the magnificently magical flying reindeer became the Christmasaurus's life ambition, and from that moment on, it was all he ever thought about. And if I turn this over, you'll see there's his idea there of the magnificent flying reindeer. If a reindeer can fly, then so can I, he would think to himself in his dinosaur thoughts. He promised himself that he would do whatever it took to get his scaly dinosaur tail off the ground and into the air with the reindeer. So, the Christmasaurus started eating the same food as the reindeer and drinking the same drinks as the reindeer. He even started sleeping in the stables with the reindeer in the hope that whatever magic made them fly might rub off on him. But you see, it wasn't as simple as that. There was a special reason why the reindeer could fly, and it wasn't their food or drink. It wasn't the way they slept, and it wasn't to do with the great velvety antlers or the golden glowing hooves. There was a deeper magic at work, and it was the strongest, oldest kind of magic that exists. All around the world, there are millions of children, just like you, who all know about Santa's flying reindeer. They don't just think Santa's reindeer can fly. Those millions of children believe that Santa's reindeer definitely can fly. They believe beyond any shadow of doubt, and belief is the most powerful magic there is. Believing is the only magic that makes the utterly impossible completely possible, and the undoubtedly undoable undeniably doable. And of all the different kinds of belief there are, the belief of a child is by far the most unbelievably unstoppable. If all the children in the world suddenly stopped believing in Santa and flying reindeer and all the wonderful things in the North Pole, then all of the fantastic things would pop out of existence like the bursting of a bubble. That's why believing is so important. It's what keeps magic alive. And so you can see the problem. Not one child on planet Earth knew that there was a dinosaur living in the North Pole. Not one child believed that a dinosaur could fly. So it was hopeless. No matter how fast the Christmasaurus ran, no matter how high the Christmasaurus jumped, without the belief of a child, he just couldn't fly. On the 1st of December, the Christmasaurus was walking alone around the outskirts of the elf city with his head hanging low. The North Pole was getting into the full swing of Christmas, and the Christmasaurus saw a great snowball fight in the distant snowfields. But he was terrible at throwing snowballs with his tiny little dinosaur arms. The elves had erected the most enormous Christmas tree in the centre of the ranch. But he was completely rubbish at decorating Christmas trees. The tinsel always got caught up in his claws and tail. He couldn't swim like the narwhals or wrap presents like the fairies. In fact, when he thought about it, the Christmasaurus realised just how different he was. He really didn't fit in at all. The Christmasaurus let out a very low, very sad roar, leaving long, lonely claw prints behind him. His scaly tail dragging in the snow. He stared out into the distance over the great North Pole mountains. And as the northern lights splashed their greens and blues across the sky, he wondered if there was anyone else in the whole wide world who was like him. Was there anybody out there who knew what it was like to be different. What the Christmasaurus didn't know was that there was someone a long way away who was looking up at the sky just like him, wondering the exact same thing. Someone who knew just what it was like to be different. You've already met him, of course. That someone was a small boy called William Trundle. Chapter 7. The Thing About William. 3 Christmases had passed since we first met William, and this 10-year-old version of him wasn't quite the chirpy fella he used to be. But before we get into that, there's something else you should know about him. You see, the thing about William was that William couldn't walk. William has a wheelchair. Did I forget to mention that? Sorry. William had been in a nasty, horrible accident when he was a little boy, and that was the sad day that he had lost his mother and gained a wheelchair. It had been awful and difficult, but it was a long time ago. Other than his shiny red dino-decorated wheelchair, he was just like every other kid now. He went to school like every other kid, liked watching TV like every other kid, forgot his homework like every other kid, and occasionally picked his nose and ate it. Ooh! Like every other kid. I don't think you've done that. Of course not. All the other kids at Holy Heath Primary School had got so used to William having a wheelchair that he didn't notice it anymore. That was until she started. The new girl who'd moved into a house across the street from William and had joined William's class last year. She changed everything. Her name was Brenda Payne. And if you look, you'll see a picture of William Trundle, and there's Brenda Payne. Brenda was the meanest girl in the whole school, possibly the world. She was a greedy, loud, bossy bully who always had to be the centre of attention. She had annoyingly perfect twirly blonde hair. Twirls are like curls that are when you're showing off. And horribly straight, blindingly white teeth. And even though she was far too young, she would wear makeup to school, which she'd steal from the older girls. And it made her look freakishly, deceptively pretty for such a nasty piece of work. Brenda's first day at school had started out just fine. She gave William that awkward, sad look that most people gave him when she first saw his wheelchair. But William was used to that look. He'd had years of experience of that look. So he just did what he always did. He smiled. William had such a brilliant, confident smile that it shone out, just like that really strong torch that you have lying in your cupboard at home that you never ever use. His smile instantly made that look vanish from Brenda's face. It was lunchtime that it all went horribly wrong. The whole school was waiting impatiently in line for school dinner, which usually comprised something like the sort of what looked like chicken, coated in something that sort of looked like breadcrumbs, accompanied by soggy strips of potato that they call chips, and a compulsory scoop of some sort of green mush. I'm glad our school dinners don't look like that. The school cafeteria was a large open space with a serving station along one wall and dozens of tables and chairs lined up across the permanently sticky floor. Although lunchtime was monitored by Old Man Wrinkleface, the school caretaker, he could usually be found snoozing in the corner with his feet on an upturned bucket, his hand clasping a flask of lukewarm tea, and his hearing aid switched off. This lunchtime belonged to the kids, in his opinion. This was every new kid's nightmare. The stares, the glares, the flares. Old Man Wrinkle-Faced always wore flares. The air was thick with judgment, so the last person you would want to be on that day was Brenda Payne. She was first in line to get served,